So I think that's enough of all the admin. So I would like to welcome our guests tonight, Carol and Fiona, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and then I'm going to hand over to them. So I don't know who would like to go first. Fiona, would you like to go first?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Fiona Morrison. I'm an employability advisor at Fife College, but I am an employability and youth support worker with Adoption UK Scotland, and I am a care experienced adult. I was brought up in a very complex and complicated kinship care environment. I'll probably tell you more later. Right.
Carol.
My name is Carol. I am a health and wellbeing advisor at Fife College, and I'm also community engagement lead for AUK for the Work with E project, and I'm also leading with the Adults with FASD work for the FASD Hub Scotland. I'm an adoptee and I'm also an adult with FASD.
Sorry if I looked a little bit distracted there, but I was getting messages to say the chat function wasn't working, but it should now be working. So if you would like to comment in the chat, you should now be able to do so. So I'm going to turn my camera off, and Jo, who's behind the scenes there as well, will turn her camera off, and I'm just going to change the settings a little bit. And would you like me to start screen sharing straight away? Is this it? I'm going to be the hostess with the mostess tonight and do the clicks for them. So you might hear the occasional next. But let me just turn my camera off and we'll get the screen share up.
Yay.
Working. So yeah.
You go, Carol.
Right, okay. So hi everybody. Kind of covered the first couple of slides, Barbara, just for the introduction. So obviously myself and Fiona are from an education background and employability. And we both work with AUK with young people with FASD, adoptive and kinship backgrounds. So we'll switch past the hello part. And we'll give you a bit of background. So we both work through funding and do a project called the E Project. Some of you might know about it, some of you might not, so this is a shameless plug if you don't. So our project is basically for young people across the whole of Scotland from adoptive, kinship and FASD backgrounds. We work on stage rather than age, which is really important, especially with FASD. So we have an under 9s group, 10 to 14s, 15 to 17 and 18 plus groups. Creating like community support. For me, as I know from my experiences, and I'm sure Fiona will share hers in a bit too. Growing up, I didn't really know anybody like me. Growing up, I didn't know how to FSD for a start, but I didn't know anybody that was an adoptee. So what we're trying to create is structured scaffolding peer support for young people as they transition through different stages through their life, so that they go into adulthood with like-minded people like themselves. We don't group people based on their background. It's basically on what stage they are in life. So we've got some people that are maybe not ready to move on to the age group that suits them, and they can stay in the lower group and they can move about as freely as they want. They can give it a go and then move back. We create lots of artwork. We do lots of opportunities and days out. But it's a big, massive backbone of that from feedback from the young people, and what they're really passionate about is education, and how strongly they feel about getting the right support and what matters to them the most. And then we're very lucky to get more funding that we could extend the project just that little bit more. And if we move on to the next slide, Fiona will discuss the employabilities matter part of the project. Sorry, maybe it's the next one.
Next one, please, Barbara. So yeah, quite a similar kind of background to Carol, that when I was growing up, I didn't know that I was living in this kinship care environment. And when it all came out, my world was kind of blown apart. And I very quickly fell into this sort of textbook model of what care experienced young people generally do, where I rebelled against everybody. I'm still doing that. But I went to music college straight away, and you know, spent all the money and dropped out, and then got married and had kids all rapidly, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Nobody really gave me any effective guidance around careers and employability or anything like that at high school, because I was quite good at music, so I was very quickly thrown into this, oh, you're going to go to music college, and I thought, all right, that's what I'm going to do. It was never about what I actually wanted to do. So I think, you know, I've ended up in this kind of career because I'm really passionate about helping people with their careers, and I recently qualified as a careers advisor, so it's been quite a journey for me, finding out about the theories that underpin that and going, oh yeah, I did that, and it's been quite enlightening. So when I became involved with the E-project, I was really passionate about wanting to make sure that it wasn't, you know, the day where I had to turn up and wave an employability flag and do the careers talk, because that just doesn't work. I'm all about relationship building, because that's what I really feel that employability is all about. It's building relationships with other adults, with potential employers, and ultimately building a relationship with yourself so that you understand how, you know, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how you're going to perform in the world of work. So I work one-to-one with young people if they need it. I've had chats with parents as well. Somebody actually said to me recently that what they got was hope, and I thought that was quite powerful. You know, that a parent felt at last that they actually had a little bit of hope given their way about, you know, hope the future holds for their young person. But you know, the kind of stuff that we should be doing with our young people, thinking about volunteering, work experience as they get a bit older, and really importantly, tackling this positive digital presence thing, which is, as we know, is quite massive for care experienced young people, and trying to be like a positive role model and doing a bit of mentoring in every kind of interaction that we have with young people. So I think we're quite unique. And between Carol's background and my background, we've been able to not do all the things that other people have tried in the past. So yeah, next slide, please, Barbara. So yeah, this is just a quote that I think kind of sums it up. You know, we all learn in a unique way. We just have to find out what works best for us, and there isn't one way for all. And that's kind of what Carol and I preach in everything, really.
Yep, so if we move on to the next slide. So just to explain how this kind of piece of work came about. So there's a lot of work with the adults with FASD, and what's happening with that is that we put a survey out, and obviously we work with young people as part of the E-project, and because education is such a strong topic, we're able to get a lot of information about areas that are important to them. So we'll explain a bit more about what's getting released on the website later that you can probably sneak peek at, but our first topic is education and employability, because the feedback that we get, and from my own personal experience, is that there's so much information and resources with regards to FASD, which is amazing because there never used to be, and we've come a long way. However, if you're over the age of 16, there doesn't seem to be much that's written by someone with that lived experience. It's always like, I know I looked at stuff and you just feel like you've been spoken to about how you should be or how you should feel, kind of thing. And this is what this project of work is about, is to try and use, you know, the voices of those with lived experience, and create fact sheets and resources and things like that from people that have experienced similar things, so you don't feel isolated and alone, as I did in the education system. So again, this part's going to look about over the age of 16 in Scotland. It's based around the supports and stuff that's in Scotland, around education and employability. And what we'll do is we'll break it down into like brain domains, because we think that that's the easiest way to do it. And we'll start off with education, and then Fiona will go on to do the exact same structure, but with regards to employability. But we'll both jump in and out as we see fit. And if anyone's got any questions with that, feel free, we will monitor the chat. If we can move to the next slide, please. And again. So again, this is looking at like the executive function and academic skills. We've kind of lumped the two of them together rather than keeping them separate because they are very, very much interlinked with each other. And a lot of this will be very repetitive as what you maybe see with young people growing up, and a lot of the resources you see with the relation to primary school or primary going into secondary. We're kind of looking at the stage of moving on from secondary either to college or even into university, depending on the academic skills of that, and just about the daily struggles that people with FASD have. About some things that people just don't think about. You get a new timetable. That's really, really daunting for anybody that's moving up. So these transactions are difficult for those without these kind of backgrounds. And with FASD, it's just like times 1,000 and your brain just goes in overdrive. So changing the timetables, it could even be, people that you don't know, just going into a big school environment, being told that you have to do self-led learning. Like, what is self-led learning? I don't know how to lead myself through my daily tasks, never mind anything else on top of that. Maths, numbers, the usual stuff. Comprehension. Abstract concepts is a really big one, especially what we find is that people with care experience, because they've been brought up with certain terminologies, they kind of seem to go, and Fiona will talk about this as well, down a certain career path, or think that they should go into like social care, or if they should go into childcare or social sciences, because the terminology that was used for them growing up in certain place settings is what they've become accustomed to, and it's what they relate to. And a big thing for us is, especially the E-project, is doing tasks, and we'll put tasks out, or we've got a magazine, or we've got different themes and stuff, and it's kind of pulling out talents, or going, we noticed that you really took a lead on this project, I think you've got really good leadership skills, and it's trying to draw out traits that they didn't know that they had, and say, have you ever thought about trying this, or looking at this as a career? So it's building those relationships to get to that point where you can start to pull out those and celebrate the small wins with them. But with regards to the abstract concepts, I will go off on a tangent and come back. What we find, especially with FASD, if you're doing like social sciences or social care and they're talking about theories and theorists, sometimes it's hard to get your head around that because you just can't seem to comprehend as like, why did they think like that? Because that's just silly. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, again, that I really struggled with social sciences. I was one of them. But I did struggle with that, but you do find ways to work around it. We are very, very intelligent, but we do learn a lot better like hands-on approach. So again, sitting and having to write an essay isn't our strong point. If you were just to record us saying, what we know, that deeper learning is there. It's just how we get that out on paper. Plagiarism is a big one as well. Understanding consequences and stuff like that. So you might think, oh, that's really good. I'm just gonna copy that down without maybe referencing it properly, and like, getting around that is a big struggle with people with FASD and explaining why it's not the right way to do things. So, well, that's what we've noticed at the college anyway. If we move on to the next slide, again, sensory and motor, it's I don't really need to say much about it. We know how it is. Large classrooms, classroom debates, everybody talking over each other, it gets too much. Group work, socializing, making friends, loads and loads of stuff. Lunch halls, people want to go and sit on their own. Like, well, why they sitting on their own or being odd, and it's trying to get people to explain there's something else going on. It's taking that time to get to know them. And I think the biggest thing for me was that the difference between being at high school and in college, you do feel more like a person rather than a number, and you are treated more like an individual in those aspects, and people do get to know you a bit better. If we move on to the next one. Living and social skills is a massive one. Reading the room, social cues, being easily influenced to do something to break the rules or just to fit in. It's like you just want people to like you, and you're masking that much that you're just socially vulnerable, basically, because you don't want to feel isolated or alone. So you'll maybe getting into stuff that's not necessarily the best stuff. Kind of like what we did when we were younger, and having no fear and just going head first into everything, but on a much higher level with lots of more dangerous behaviours that are associated with becoming an adult, unfortunately. And again, it's especially if you're going on, so for example, for me, it's about the whole stage and age thing. I managed to get the right academic grades to go to university. So for that was a big thing for my mum, because she thought, oh, you were told you wouldn't achieve anything, so you're going to go whether you like it or not, kind of thing. And I was just like, okay, that's fine. So at that age, I was 18, but if you think about age and stage, it was like sending my 10-year-old to go and live on his own. I had no life skills, no nothing. So a big thing for us is about the stage side of things. Although you might be academically ready, are we setting you up to fail by sending you to university, because that's the way to go and get to do what you need to do. It's about promoting other routes. So for the college route, you can still study a degree, but if it doesn't work after year one, you still have a HNC at the back of it. And like me, I went to university, left after first year, failed miserably, nothing to show for it, and lots of student debt, much like Fiona, tail between your legs and think, I'm not capable. People said I was, and they were right, they were go kind of thing. So it's kind of making sure that, especially schools are always very much like, if you want to do a certain profession, this is the route you need to go. Actually, no, this is the person, this is the background, this is what they struggle with, this is what's more suited to them as a person in order to thrive and succeed. So if we can move on to the next one. Again, focus and attention. Like, you might see me doodling while Fiona talks. It's not that I'm not listening or I'm being rude, it's just me keeping myself idle. So yeah, again, over distracted, overstimulated, or impulsive. I've got a habit of jumping in when people are talking, and I don't mean it that way. I just feel like I'm trying to be part of something. So again, it does take time, and I still struggle with stuff like that. So again, it's just kind of learning, as you go forward, but that always takes time. It's not a one size fits all. I still learn every day, especially like the other week where I had my 40th birthday, and it was sensory overload for me, and I just looked really ungrateful, but I was really happy on the inside. My face just did not show it when everybody like surprised me with lunch. So it's just little things like that. And I think the whole part of us talking about this is to raise awareness. A lot of you might be parents and carers are already aware of this already, and are kind of like, yeah, we know this, how can we move forward with that kind of thing. But I think the more and more that we talk about it and get that out there and recognise how to support people to achieve the right way, that we just need to keep singing from the same hymn sheet, unfortunately. So yeah, and we can't sit still. I sing in chair a lot. I do it. It's not, again, it's trying to explain that it's not that we're not interested. It's not that we're being troublemakers, or it's not that we're being defiant. It's not. It's just different ways that we need to keep ourselves regulated. If we can move on to the next one. So again, reasoning and thinking. So again, it's still really quite linked to stuff I've said already. You've got the stuff with the attention sort of thing. Learning and memory is a big one. For me, I need to constantly rewrite things down to take it in. My partner laughs at me because when I was studying, I had lots of books that just said the same thing over and over again. It was like I'd been in detention, and I was writing my lines, and I was like, no, it's just the way that I process the information. And for example, like during lockdown, I really struggled when everything moved online. Because for me, like especially if we've got a lot of meetings or a lot of stuff's happening, I'd go, right, I was in this location, in this room, and these people, and those windows, and those doors, and I'd remember the location, I'd remember the content of the meeting. When you're behind a screen all the time, I couldn't do that. I was having to move into different rooms of my house to see if that would try and help. So there's loads and loads of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but you're in front of that camera just going, yeah, just nod and smile along sort of thing. So yeah, there is lots of stuff that goes on. And as you get older, that masking becomes you're just a master at it. But also as you get older, it's really harder to keep that mask up because you're knackered. And again, speaking about the complex ideas, and some subjects are difficult to study. It's not that we're incapable of studying these subjects, it's just that we need to learn in a different way, or just need a little bit more time at certain points of those subjects. So if we move on to the next one. Communication is key. We're good at communicating, or we can come across a lot older than what we are, especially if we're speaking. It might seem like we are really understanding what's going on, but not necessarily understanding what's being said. And then you'll probably find that if someone's open with you, they will come back and say, I know I said I understood what you said, but could you maybe explain it a bit better? So it's always making sure that you're just checking in to make sure that they've grasped what they've said. So again, it's like, it's maybe repetition of what you've been asked already, just to clarify that they have grasped what you've asked of them. But don't bombard them with loads of information. Like, for example, the college is doing all the welcome sessions in the first week of academic term, they get all these class talks and it's information overload. And it's just not going in, it's going in one ear and out the other with all students, to be fair. But those with FSD are really, really struggling with that as well. So it's kind of trying to keep stuff into bite-sized chunks when you're maybe relaying a lot of information. Or if it's they're having to do an essay, again, telling them different ways to study or to do it, like the Pomodoro technique's really good because it breaks it down and you take a break and you work your way through it, rather than sitting to, I'm going to put 3 hours aside and write this essay, because nobody can learn that way. So again, it's just kind of finding different ways to learn. And again, highlighting back to the first quote, it's not a one size fits all. What worked for me isn't going to work for someone else. We're just sharing our experiences of it. And again, just highlighting again to repeat instructions, just to make sure that they have grasped the understanding of what they're being asked. If we can move on to the next. And again, memory, yeah, like my memory is weird. Like I remember stuff that happened yesterday, and then I can not remember stuff that happened ages ago, and then there's these big blank bits in my life that I don't remember. It's just the way it is. So yeah, it's really difficult, especially when you're trying to study, as well. And I think with the memory side of things, especially education, and then having to go and sit an exam, which is just a big memory test, so you can imagine how stressful that is. But if you were to pull me out of that situation and ask me questions and record my answers, I'd be able to answer you no bother. But that whole environment and the whole situation, and it's just not there. Whereas you get some people that could relay information really well because their memory is great, but the deeper understanding might not be there. But with FSD, the deeper understanding is there. It's just how to get that out in an exam format, unfortunately. Again, our visual memory is better, and visual clues work really well. Like, again, going back to how I remember about meetings and stuff, all these visual elements and how I remember it works so much better than written format. So it could be that, if you're studying certain things, or you're trying to remember, study cue cards with like pictures of like certain things, so you can remember it rather than trying to write all the information down. And again, that memory, I know we spoke about education, how that impacts daily life, which we'll talk about in a few weeks' time about living skills with FSD. That's for another time. But with this, again, with education, it's about your usual routine. So remember, you're getting your bag packed the night before, making sure that you remember you've got your lunch, that you've got, your bus pass, that you've got your travel card, that you've got money, that you remember to have a shower in the morning, remember to iron your clothes. Again, it's just all these little things can really impact it, or you might be so focused on remembering that you had homework and that you needed to bring that, or your laptop needed to be charged, that you've forgotten about all the other stuff. So again, it can impact in so many ways, and we could unpack it in so many ways that we'd be here all night. So it's just a quick glance over with that. If we move on to the next one.
Hey. How do I follow that? Oh, no, go back to the previous one. Sorry, there we go. Yeah. So when I work with young people, one of the first thing I do is I ask them what they think employability means. And I do this, I've been doing it over and over the past couple of weeks at Fife College because we've been doing introductory sessions. But so the official, well, when I ask this question, people normally say, oh, it's about getting a good CV or it's about getting a job. But the definition that I try to impart to people and have them to think about is that it's about your capability of gaining and maintaining a job. And a lot of people forget about the maintaining part, because we all know people, like Carol and I, we both, we went to college and uni and it didn't work out straight away. And that was because we didn't have the proper foundation in place there. So with young people, I always say, you've been doing employability all your life. I can remember when my son was at playgroup and he got picked to help spread the sandwiches. That was part of him learning, very, very small part of his employability starting there. So it's lifelong. It's not something that you do until you get a job. We're constantly doing it. I'm one of these people that would love to be a lifelong student, because I've just got this constant drive to learn and study, and employability is a big part of that. So next slide, please. So yeah, there's a lot of crossover here with what Carol was talking about from education. executive functioning in terms of, you know, anyone who's living with FASD, the planning and organisation can get in the way sometimes of taking on a job. And I've worked with young people, like Carol said, who've been told, oh, you'll never get a job, you'll never succeed. But what I try to do is get people to turn their negatives into a positive. And a lot of these examples come from young people who've had experience working in hospitality, where they've been able to turn that sort of, you know, turn their neurodiversity into a superpower. So if the example I always give is somebody who learned how to do barista training, they were doing barista training, and they got really engrossed in doing latte art, and they gave the best coffee every time. It was absolutely perfect. And the employers were blown away by the way that these young people had been encouraged to sell this as a strength rather than it being a weakness. You know, don't apologize for what something that you've lived with all your life. But the transition stuff in particular can be really difficult into the world of work, because a lot of employers have an unrealistic expectation. A lot of employers have never heard about FASD as well. So I try to, you know, influence that. I had someone recently say to me that they thought that you grew out of FASD, that when you were a baby, it just affected you when you were a baby, and then you got better. And I was glad Carol wasn't around when that was said. So yeah, there's lots of parallels there. The key for me is about understanding and managing it all, knowing how that, you know, if you recognise you're going to have a difficulty in controlling something, how can we turn that into a positive? So next slide, please. This is possibly the one that I hear has the biggest impact for working anywhere, but particularly for young people going into what we call entry-level jobs that have maybe, you know, I hate to use the phrase that the Tory government used, but this, you know, low-skilled jobs. It's a horrible phrase, but it's a job that somebody will get straight out of school. They think that they should just be able to do it, no problem at all. But the sensory overload in those kind of environments is really so overwhelming. Even I'm working with an employer at the moment who has a retail store in Fife, and she has a radio on, she has the TV going as well. And the colours, I mean, our colours are fabulous, but it is an absolute sensory overload the minute you walk in the shop. And she's got one of these fancy, what they call diffusers, an electric diffuser, and it smells as well that are added in there. And some of the young people just will not cope with this at all. And then there's the uniform. I'm like that with t-shirts. You know, I get really self-conscious at the best of time, and yeah, like I can see Paula's comment there about the busy school environment. It's exactly the same for workplace environments, and a lot of employers make this mistake of thinking that young people want a really busy work environment, and they don't. They just want to crawl into a drawer when they get faced with that. Even the posters, I have a colleague who's neurodiverse, and we have these motivational posters up in one of the hubs, and she just wants to turn them round every time she comes in the office, because, you know, the font's not right, she said, and the colours are not right. So yes, it's really overwhelming, and we're trying to influence employers around this. I'm working with an employer through Fife College who wants to create a chill out room in a contact centre, and he looked up what Google were doing. If you've ever wanted to see what a workplace shouldn't look like, look up Google, because they've got ball pits, they've got water pistols, Nerf guns, they've got everything, you know, that is just going to absolutely overwhelm people, and that they think this is like a great break area, and it doesn't work. So we're trying really hard to influence that. Next slide, please. So academic skills, like Carol said, there's a lot of crossover between education here going into the workplace. Young people can be really intelligent, but, you know, they really struggle at times with understanding things unless it's visual or a hands-on approach. And I see this a lot with neurodiverse young people at the college who they've been thrust into, oh, you've your care experience, well, you should go and study care then. sorry, that was just reading that in case that was a question. So there's a lot of employers who think that if someone's got an HNC or an HND that they're academic, but in reality they've had to, you know, learn very differently. So it's just about, you know, like I said earlier, it's not a one size fits all approach. Next slide, please. So the living and social skills, there's a big crossover here as well with the social media side of things. And more these days, well, I would say now it's 100% of employers are looking at potential employees through social media to see what their lives are really like. And I've been reading quite a bit about neurodiverse young people giving off a false impression through social media that can impact on their job chances. You know, the plagiarism stuff. They're maybe seeing something that someone else has posted that they think's really cool, and then they go and, you know, post that themselves, not really fully understanding what that is. So there's a lot of easy influence stuff there. And if you think about, you know, where your first experience of work was, I can remember my first job. I was still at high school, and because, you know, it was back in the days where you got work experience picked by a computer for you, and I said I wanted to go into a record shop because that was the closest thing that they could get to music college for me, and they couldn't find a record shop that would take me, so they sent me to make pies in a bakery, and it was unreal because there was a lot of people there who were trying to, you know, tell me, oh, you didn't need to go to uni, you didn't need to do this, you didn't need to do that. And, you know, I was very nearly quite influenced into quite a really dodgy world. So it's having the confidence to challenge that and knowing who to go to check out who is the person that you can trust. So banter in the workplace can be really confusing as well. We have that quite a lot of banter in our day job that some people, it's a specific type of humour, and Carol and I are quite into serial killers. You know, we're one of these dad people that likes to relax with serial killers, and sometimes people find this. I've noticed recently that there's some people at work think that we are really odd. So that kind of banter can be misconstrued. Next one. So focus on attention in the workplace. I'm one of these people that needs to have everything organised. My calendar's colour-coded. I've got shortcuts on my emails and things to know exactly what it is. But that's just because if I don't have that there, I will go off onto tangents and it'll just go all over the place. So in the workplace, having the space to do that, or thinking about a job that, you know, you will have the space to do that, and it can be misinterpreted as being easily distracted. And I was actually in a meeting today where I was doodling, and I was suddenly very aware that people were looking at me and looking at what I was doodling because they thought I wasn't paying attention, but the opposite was the case. I was actually doodling so I could focus on what was being said. So yeah. Next slide, please. We're getting through these, aren't we? So yeah, cognition, big one. Again, a lot of parallels here with what Carol was saying. Difficulty with your attention, planning and organisation. If you can think about that in the workplace, I always try to encourage young people, if this is something they recognise that they're having difficulties with, to come and see me, and we can do personal development plans that are even something not even as big as a 90-day plan, a 30-day plan. And I'm working with a student at the moment. I worked with them last year, and they're back at college this year. And they actually said to me the other day, can we do 60-day plans? And I thought, wow, that's a small win, that they've been thinking about that over the summer, that they want to move from 30-day plans to 60-day plans. So it's stuff like that. They've got, I think, but this is one of the joys that Carol and I have with the E-Project, is that young people can come to us without any fear of being, oh no, you're 18, you're 19, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. It is all about stage rather than your age. And in the workplace, I'm trying to get employers to appreciate this, and one day we'll reach them all. And communication is the next one, I think. So lengthy conversations, as you can imagine, in the workplace is probably one of the biggest ones. And not even in the job, even thinking about job interviews. I was at an interview once and I could not cope with the length of the questions and 3-part questions. I was just like, oh, this is unreal. And I felt like, you know, because I was working at the level that I'm at, that I was definitely being judged along, well, we can't get this job because they can't keep up with the questions. So trying to influence the job applications as well. I'm working with an employer at the moment who they say they don't accept CVs. It's actually a local authority, and if you apply to a job there, it says do not submit a CV. But when you get to the job application section, it says please upload your CV. The software that they're using says please upload your CV, but on the job spec bit it says don't upload your CV, upload your personal statement. And it's just mind-blowing that they cannot get someone to fix that bit. So we're trying really hard to get the employers to see things way down the line before we even get to the interviewing stage. Next slide, please. The memory one's a big one. I write everything down as well. My colleagues joke with me, I've got lists about lists about lists, and there's just, yeah, and I've got this thing where if I'm saving things into folders, I've got sort later, and then they're saved in another folder to be sorted, and it's just, it becomes, yeah, I really need to sort them out. But a lot of the stuff for employers around visual memory, they don't seem to get this. So I'm trying to work on this with young people so that they can sell that to an employer, you know, as a bonus point. Because these days, employability, it's not about your CV really, it's about your personal branding, and that is what a CV should be. And I can only, you know, hope that the young people that we're working with actually try to educate other adults about this, that their CV's not just about their qualifications or what school they went to, it's about understanding who they are as a person. What's the first thing that comes to mind when someone says their name? So if you're really good at, you know, with visual memory, use Instagram as part of your personal branding when you're trying to sell yourself to an employer. So you're actually doing it for your own memory, but you're using it as a positive tool to an employer. The bit about the forgetting usual steps and usual routine around hygiene and physical appearance, well, we're trying to take some of those steps away by getting in early, saying if you get an interview, speak to us if you're needing clothing. And I run an initiative at Fife College called Dress for Success, where young people can get interview clothing. They can also get a refresh at our hair and beauty salon, or they can go to the barbers. And so that's quite a privilege that we've got in working with Fife College, but it's something that Carol and I want to try and introduce to the young people that we're working with as well through Adoption Scotland, by reaching out to local employers that'll, you know, a local salon that'll maybe give a free hair refresh, or having a bank of clothing. That employer I was mentioning earlier, who's got the massively bright shop, she's already said that she would love to donate outfits to young people at Adoption Scotland when they've got interviews. So we've got one on board. We're hoping to extend this. So the next bit, a wee bit about what you need to know. Or hormones, sorry, how could I forget hormones? Yeah. So I thought it was really important to include this because the world is far better at talking about hormones these days than it ever was. And we all know that hormonal fluctuations can intensify other feelings and behaviours, and impacting on your memory as well. I hear a lot from some colleagues about the menopause fog and stuff like that. There's a lot of research out there that I've been hearing about with the FASD and elevated testosterone levels that can impact on mood swings. So I think, you know, are employers aware of this? Probably not. So we want to try and raise this to the fore. So now we can do what you need to know, please. Harold, do you want to do a bit? Sorry, it's my hormones.
So again, when we're saying what you need to know, it's not necessarily yourselves that are watching. This is about, you know, when it's these transitions. So what myself and Fiona, well, what Fiona's mainly working on is that we're hoping to I'll let her talk a wee bit more about it, is have like a passport to success sort of thing. And what we want this to be is just like one document. So for example, if they're moving from secondary into college or further education, they would pass this over. So initially when you first go to those settings, you would want to make sure the support's in place, whether that's with the inclusion department or the social plan with the guidance team. They will basically, they just sit down and say, what do you struggle with and what strategies do you use to cope with that? They put a plan together and it's shared with all the lecturers and support staff so they're aware of that student and the struggles that they've got. And then this should be the only time they should have to share this information. And we know that this is a big ask, but we're hoping that that's our vision going forward, and that Fiona is talking about replicating one for when they start a job. So when they start a job, it's kind of them just going, this is me, kind of thing. And it's the only time I should tell you that this is what's going on. So I think a big thing for us is that we've got a load of resources coming out about FASD and education and employability. They will be coming out. In fact, they're actually out now. They're getting announced tomorrow, but you lucky people get a sneak peek on the website, and Barbara and that will share the link to that. So there's loads of stuff that we've spoken about today, but there's a little bit more as well. But I think the biggest thing from an education perspective is that we thrive on the routine, the structure and consistency. And it helps us function a lot more better if it is like that. I know that, you know, if you turn up and you're set up for a day, and like for me, if a meeting's cancelled for work, well, that just throws my whole day, because it's like, well, what am I doing between that time and that time? Because it's totally mucked up my plans. And it's the exact same if they turn up to a class and, for example, there's some strikes and stuff going on. If they turn up to a class and the strike's not on, they're like, well, what am I doing today? Because I'm now stuck at college. I don't know what I'm doing. My plan was to be here till 3 o'clock and that's not there anymore. And then you suddenly just go into overdrive about what you might be doing instead. So it's just raising awareness about all the sorts of struggles. And again, I think awareness is key, because some people know, some people don't. There's a lot of myths around what FASD is. I can assure you that you do not grow out of that. That really bugs me. People say that. If anything, it gets worse depending on certain situations. So again, it's just about the language and important. For education, for me, it's about telling people that there is no wrong path, that you can go and achieve anything that you want to do, no matter what stage in life, with the right support. So, you know, for me, I was given the wrong information by my guidance teacher at high school, saying you need to go to a traditional university to do this job, that job, and off I went. Failed miserably, came back, sort of like Fiona, went on to have kids and stuff like that. And it wasn't until 2015, when I was like 30 something, that I went back to college, and it was a whole different ballgame. You know, I got asked what I struggled with. We spoke about FASD for the first time, and it really got a lot of people talking inside college about it at that point, because it wasn't as well known at that stage. And like the whole peer experience, me and Fiona kind of at the same time kind of got involved with the college and did so much work around that too. And it's about building that awareness. But for me, you know, I failed university, so I went back to the HNC, HND and thought that's it. But then someone else believed in me and says, look, go on and do your degree. So, you know, I ended up getting a degree and a master's. But I got my master's like, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago? Like, turned 40 last week. So, like, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, at that stage, you know, when I was 18, I was still like a 10-year-old. I had no life experience, no nothing. I didn't know how to process who I was and how I learned. And it doesn't matter whether you achieve a degree at 20 or if you achieve it when you're 40. It doesn't matter. You should, and this whole thing about comparing yourself to others and stuff like that. And I think that's a huge, massive thing for not only people with FASD at the moment, but all young people. That whole, well, they're doing that at that age, and this is what's expected of me. And it's like, well, actually, no. You know, you've got young people trying to pick what they want to do and what subjects they want to do. It's like, you know, they don't know the backside for their elbow at that stage. So it's, again, it's trying to promote that. If we move on to the next, I'll let Fiona go on about the employability side of things.
Yeah, the just to go back to what Cara was saying about like the passport stuff, it's kind of like a vision of, you know, that somebody's proud of it. So they're taking a document to an employer that's got everything that they've achieved, but also what they may need to continue achieving, so that an employer feels part of that as well. I would love it to be introduced as part of like an interview process, because if you think about it, when you're going in as a young person to get interviewed, the questions are all on you. Why can the young person not have the same kind of interview back to see if that company is going to support their needs. So it's something that we're, you know, I'm sure when Carol and I have got more hours in the day, that this thing will reach a higher part of our priority. But every employer that I work with in my day job, I'm trying to mention care experience and FASD, you know, just to mention that where I work as well. And a lot of employers, they'll cut, well, I've had a few have come back and asked for more info, but there's some employers point blank, you know, that they're just not interested, which is really quite sad. Somebody thought care experience meant that you'd worked in a care home, and it just blew my mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, top tips would, the fact sheets are brilliant. I know I'm biased, but they're full of really good information, and ultimately, you know, it's Carol who's put them together. So there is someone who's living with the experience of this, and it's not just somebody who's, you know, pulled it out a theory book or whatever. The other bit on there is about taking time. I feel this is the biggest thing. I think I'm quite instinctive when I meet a young person, particularly a care experienced young person. You can always sense they've got more to tell. And it's just finding that wee road in. Like one of our family days that we had recently, it was just by mentioning to this one young person in particular that I loved her t-shirt, that then she came alive, and we found out that they were going to a concert, and this conversation that we had around music was brilliant, whereas previously it might not have had that kind of opening. So it's taking the time to chat with someone, and it doesn't always have to be badged careers and employability, because who knows what door may open. I know it sounds really cheesy, but the way I think of it is every connection's an opportunity, and you might meet somebody and you might connect with them, and it opens up another connection and another connection. And this is what's happening in the world of employability. It's like that's why LinkedIn is doing so well. I can always remember my gran when I was growing up saying to me, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's absolutely true. You know, I've made connections through working with Carol at Fife College that have, you know, have opened up lots of other doors to me, and people who are coming back now asking for additional information about what we're doing at Adoption Scotland. So yeah, it's time just and celebrating the small wins really. And the next slide is just kind of proof. So I think that was your first graduation, Carol, is that right? The one with the unicorn? Or
Yeah.
is that and then in the middle, that was me at Paisley last year. And then that was just last year again with you, wasn't it? The other one. So
Yeah.
with the right support, you know, the right encouragement and a bit of time. I was 50 last year, and I graduated with my postgraduate, and it was a huge year. My daughter got married as well, but you know, I have the right support around me now, the right people who know just by looking at me sometimes what I need, and sometimes that's just a strong coffee. And it's this relationship building. So yeah. And the next one you'll be glad to know is over to you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. That was absolutely fascinating. I think we'll all have gained lots of really great tips there. And as a parent of a 15-year-old who's approaching that stage, then you've definitely got me thinking an awful lot about how I'm going to handle the next kind of few years ahead for him. I'm just going to have a little look here and see what is in the chat. I've not been able to look at it while I was sharing my screen, so I'm a wee bit behind. But I'll give you a question while I'm reading this. I'll give you a question that was submitted before this evening, and that was, I think this is probably one for you, Fiona.
Right.
Does FASD, should people declare it when they go for a job?
So I get asked this quite a bit, and I think in the past people felt that they shouldn't, but for me, I like to try and turn it into a positive. So I absolutely think you do need to with an employer, but it's the way you do it. It's not necessarily just saying, oh, I've got FASD, because an employer probably doesn't know what that means, or they probably think, oh, are you an alcoholic, you know, or some ridiculous thing like that. So I think it's about working with someone to enable them to disclose with positivity And like the example I said about if you're going for a job where repetition is maybe your thing, you have to be able to sell that. So you would maybe say, well, you know, on the job application, you should only be doing it in the medical side if you feel that you have a disability. I wouldn't put it in the opening statement of a CV, but I would do it I'd work with a young person when they get called for an interview to prime them. Say that, for example, the employer says, if you've got any weaknesses or something, my one is always, I'm a right stickler for perfection. So you're turning a negative into a positive. So yeah, I absolutely think we need to encourage our young people to say, yes, I have FASD. Do you know what that means? Do you know how that can be good for your company? It's all about how we turn it around. I see somebody's asking about resources and projects. I think there is a link to them, isn't there?
I
Yeah.
think just to highlight about that disclosing the stuff as well, a lot of employers are signed up to that disability confident thing with the government. So if you do disclose that you have a disability, say you've meet the minimum requirements, but maybe it wasn't enough to maybe get you through for an interview with all the other ones, a lot of them are obliged to mandatory give you an interview if you meet that criteria as well. So again, that's a positive as well, because we know that not everybody thrives. I hate job application. So not everybody thrives in that, but if you got me into a room to talk to someone, you know, you'd be like, this doesn't marry up with the person that wrote this kind of thing. So again, it's making sure that you're using it to the best of your advantage as well. And again, just stressing Fiona about saying and making it into a positive, because FASD is a positive. It's what makes us us. So yeah,
absolutely.
I'm just going to ask a question, even though you can't even see me because I have a black screen, but only because there's a question that came up, and it's quite a long question, but ultimately it results in asking if, Carol, did you attend a mainstream school, and how did you find it?
yeah, so maybe I should have said that. I didn't know I had FASD until I was a lot older in life. So I went to mainstream school with all the regular support, no learning support, no nothing. My adoptive parents knew I had FASD, but they didn't and still don't think it's a thing. They just thought I was just a troublesome child with lots of baggage. But anyway, no. So I kind of must have really been good at masking through school. So yeah, I didn't find out until I was older. So when I went back to college as a mature student, I went, oh, by the way, I've got this thing that I found in my adoption file. And they were like, oh, what's that? I remember it was Jill to the college kind of going, I know something about that. And then it kind of just sparked a whole big debate. And it was the first time I was ever able to go, that's why I struggle with that. This is why I struggle with this. This is what works. Oh, that's a strategy I didn't know I was doing. Do you know what I mean? All along. So for me, it was a total moment as an adult that's kind of just winged it through life.
And then just another one. Can somebody else said, can any of this approach work with someone who does not accept even the possibility that they are living with FASD? So to them, FASD is seen as a weakness, and this seems to be a sort of impasse compounded by secondary addiction. So they're just asking that question.
Who's going first?
Well, just, the denial thing is not exclusive to FASD. I'm working with a young person at the moment who had a diagnosis 6 months ago of epilepsy, and thinks that he doesn't have to take his medication, that he doesn't have to go to the doctors for checkups, and doesn't have to eat. And on the first day back at college, he had a massive seizure. And it took a critical incident, for us to get further in the door there. So I think what you're saying about, if there's addictions alongside that, there are some support agencies that provide specialist employability tactics for disclosing around addiction as well. But if somebody's in denial of it, it's quite a difficult one. Because, Carol, what would your advice be?
I don't know, it's a difficult one because everybody's situation is unique to their own. So I'm not in denial about having FASD, but my mum was in denial about the whole FASD thing. It's the whole stigma that's attached to it as well. which we find that a lot of people don't disclose because of. And then there's a lot of people, or they don't want it to look bad, whether it's been the birth parent or adoptive parent or whatever. But it's about raising that awareness that, you know, we know what it's like. There's so many people I know that didn't know their pregnancy was far on and were just living their life like normal kind of thing. So it's raising the awareness around that. I think, again, it depends what stage they're in life, but it's what, like, you know, life experiences that they've been through. You know, sometimes there's just a light bulb moment where it all just kind of fits into place and you're like, right, okay, this is who I am. You know, this is what I am, you know, and I'm proud to be, you know, sort of thing. For me, it was a light bulb moment because I was like, all right, I'm not the weird kid that really struggles to make friends and that doesn't fit in and stuff like that. And then I think for me, then sharing that with work colleagues, like they understand why I act in certain ways in certain social situations, or if like we've had a really busy week at college, they'll know that I've been hiding under the duvet for a whole day because my body's just gave up. So again, it's, you know, and I think, you know, especially like Fiona was saying, like, you know, when we were learning about this, like she's learned so much about all this as well, and you kind of, it's hard. I don't have a bit of advice on how to get somebody to own that identity. I think that just comes in time.
Yeah. Sometimes dropping the label works. You know, forget making it about somebody, you know, admitting, I suppose, or recognising that they've got FASD. Just focus on what they're good at, what they like.
And I think that's why the learning plans are good, because it's
Yeah.
literally, what do you struggle with as a person? It's not, so you have it. Do you know what I mean? It's literally, what do you struggle with and what's your coping strategies?
Yeah.
Or have you tried these strategies? So it's, again, that's all it is. It's not anything more than that.
And it takes time. I mean, I didn't know until I was, you know, a good age that there was even a term for kinship care. You know, I thought nobody else in the world had ever grown up the way I had done. And it was a light bulb moment, like you were saying, oh, right, that's why I've done that. That's why this has happened. And that's why I never had a full birth certificate. You know, it was all just wee things that fall into place. And it kind of felt like finding my tribe, really, when I started to understand it. So sometimes, but you know, dropping the label. You know, I have some people who've said, some young people have said to me, I can't do that because I'm autistic. And I would always, you know, I'm really annoyingly positive. I'll say, but no, you can do that because you're autistic, and this is why you're going to do it. So just finding a way in. You know, I'm happy to have further one-on-one chats with you about that if you're looking for specialist support and tactics or exercises. I mean, one of the basic things that I do when employability is, and I can't believe that I've been using Lewis Capaldi for the past 2 years as a sort of a card. I'll flash it up on screen and say, right, Lewis Capaldi, what's the first thing that springs to mind? So we've got young people just now who don't know who he is. I've done 2 classes today and not one of them knew who he was. But anyway, Lewis Capaldi, what's the first thing that springs to mind? They usually go, oh, he's a Muppet or something like that. It's something really negative. It's never that he's a singer. You know, or if you say Gordon Ramsay, he swears. It's never that he's a chef. So trying to get young people to think about what's the first thing people will say when they hear your name. Like if people say Carol Hunter at the college, they're not going to say, oh, she's got FASD. No, it's Carol, or she's running about all the time. You know, it's that kind of stuff. So there's lots of stuff I can do with you that are exercises that you can do with young people that they won't realise are employability or careers. So I'm happy to do, you know, further stuff about
Can
that.
I just ask one last question before we have to finish up? So there's one question in the chat, and I know what Barbara would say, and I know what I would say, but it'd be really useful for you guys to answer it. So is it best to get the FASD diagnosis medical wise for help and support long term? Because I think everybody worries about, should they get the diagnosis? What is the use of the diagnosis? Is there any pathway? Is there support? So the question is, I know what I think as a parent, but I'm just asking you both in your positions.
So I would say yes, as a person with FASD. Like, obviously I was fortunate to be diagnosed at birth, but again, I didn't find out until I read an adoption file at a later age. But it was there, and it was in black and white, and I researched it and was like, oh, Do you know what I mean? So that for me was key, and then getting the right support at college. My education journey actually worked, whereas in the past it didn't, and we realised now why. I think college is quite good, well, in five colleges. They kind of go with what you struggle with and what you don't, even if you've got a diagnosis or not, they still put
Mhm.
something in place to support you. However, a lot of the other colleges and universities, and a lot of them call, like we call it the inclusion team at Fife College, but like, for example, Abertay call it disability services.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, anyway, you need a diagnosis before they'll even make an
Yeah.
appointment, stuff like that. So again, it is crucial to have it. There is ways around it, especially in like education. Some places still don't know what it is either. So again, from me, I would say yes.
Yeah, and I would say yes as well, from a sort of employer perspective. So I have a chronic health condition that I declared when I got my job at Fife College. And because it was declared, I then got an occupational health assessment. And luckily for me, the nurse who gave me the occupational health assessment knew all about the condition, and she was brilliant, and she was able to contact my boss or contact the college and give a report as to what I might need, what support I might need. It wasn't mandatory, but it's there if I ever need it. And as I get older, I might need some of that support. At the moment, I don't. My support is coffee, but there'll be other things in the future that I may need, but it's on record by an independent body. So yeah, I would definitely go to get the diagnosis and have it there. You're not going to wear it like a badge, but it's a backup, like Carol says.
And I
And
think as
also
well
for
for the funding and benefits
funding,
and
yeah,
everything else in adult life, yeah,
yeah,
it's better to have it. I
yeah,
know it's a long, drawn out process and really difficult and things like that, and hopefully that will
yeah,
change with time, but please plod away because it will come
yeah.
in handy.
And I
Thank
think it's only through having sessions like this that we can raise awareness of why it's needed. Like I know that if people don't understand what it means, then they'll just dismiss it. So it's up to us to try and be the voice for the people who haven't got to the stage that we're at. So
I think it's really nice to hear that. Like somebody posted in the chat that her daughter has just started Fife College, and has got her S6 timetable, and she just put, sounds good to have people who know there. And I just think that's lovely that we've got people online just really supporting their own children.
She say
and
hi, she say hi
Yeah.
to her. Yeah,
Yeah.
if she wants that.
Yeah, come in and have a chat or
chat.
say hi even, and we'll get a coffee and a blether and
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
at least like now her parents can go, oh, okay, I know these two names. You've just
Yep.
started college, go and find, oh, she can come in and find you
Yep.
guys and
Yep.
just like point her daughter in a
Yep.
direction for additional support, which is just amazing. I'm just checking through the comments before it all finishes.
Well, just while you're doing that, because we are over time, so we need to come to the end. I just want to give Carol, and put you in the spot here, Carol, the opportunity to plug your Adults with FASD survey that's out.
So we have an adults with FASD survey so if you know any young people over the age of 16, whether they have a diagnosis or not, please get them to take part in the survey. It kind of just asks what's important to them, topics and things like that, and it will really inform the shape of our work going forward. And those who have responded already has impacted the resources that are coming out from the Adults with FASD for the month. So you lucky people will get our education and employability resources are available on our website now, but they launch tomorrow. And then each Thursday there will be a different topic that's launched, and we've kind of tied it into the webinars that's happening. So next week it's money and benefits, which ties in the webinar that's happening on Tuesday, so make sure you sign up for that. And then we've got our Living with FASD with Rossi, so he's doing his webinar, and then we've got everyday life resources, which ties in nicely with that. And the fourth and final week, we have social skills, so that's a big part as well. So these are all resources that include quotes, and it's written by people with lived experience, again, which is really good. And the work with the Adults with FASD survey will mean that we're going to do loads of more stuff. So there's some really interesting stuff coming through. So we are going to be looking at one around becoming a parent, because that seems to be a big theme that's coming through at the moment. which is great because like I know what my experiences were like when I was pregnant with my first child and what my mother said to me. So like lots are going to come out. So we're really excited to get the work going and create a whole website and resources for those over the age of 16. So keep your eyes peeled on social media and get your young people involved with us as well, because we'd love to then go on and have peer support groups and create little videos and testimonials and lots of plans. And then get involved with the e-project as well. I'm plugging everything. So if you want your young person to get involved with a community of young people that are focused on education and things like that, or they've got any questions around maybe next steps with education, or they're maybe thinking about going to college and want to chat over. I was a guidance advisor before a health and wellbeing advisor, so please get in touch. And then anything employability wise, we have our unique bespoke service with the lovely Fiona for all things career and employability wise. So when you look for stuff for people with FSD and career guidance, look no further. You're all and I think that's everything I need to plug for
Yeah.
today.
So Carol, one final question. Can people outside of Scotland get involved with the project?
At the moment, we cover the whole of just Scotland at the moment because that's what we've got the funding for. However, if people want to maybe get involved in stuff like that, we can have those conversations that might help us get more funding
Yeah.
in the future.
Thanks. So, yeah.
So yeah, please get in touch and we'll provide
That's
all the
great.
emails and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I've put a link in the chat to the Adults with FASD area of our website where you'll get the resources. You'll also find the video of this webinar in there in a couple of days' time, and there's also a link to the survey that we're doing as well. And the survey is open to anybody in the world who is over the age of 16 and has FASD or a history of prenatal alcohol exposure. So please go and have a look at that. I just want to say thank you so much, Carol and Fiona. I've got so much from tonight. I think it's been really, really great. We've had lots of lovely comments in the chat. If people want to get in touch with Fiona and Carol, then if you get in touch with us via FASD Hub, then we can pass those emails on. And please do keep in touch. And if there's anything we can do to support anybody that's watching tonight, if you want to get involved, then just get in touch with us and we'll be happy to do all that we can. Thanks very much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having us.
See you all soon.
Thank
See you
you.
later. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for all your lovely comments. Bye.
Bye.